Everything you've been told about Earth's ice melting is wrong. Not the warming part. That's real. The part where you picture coastal cities underwater by next Tuesday. Because here's the actual question almost nobody asks correctly. If every single piece of ice on Earth, every glacier, every ice cap, every ice sheet, melted completely, what would actually happen? The number is about 70 meters. That's about 230 feet. That's the top of a 20-story building. Gone. But, and this is the part nobody says, that would take centuries, maybe millennia. Not tomorrow, not 2050, not your grandkids in a hurry. So what would the planet look like? And what would you actually feel in your lifetime? Stick around. The answer is weirder than the meme.
Before you can melt the ice, you have to know where it lives. Roughly 90% of all Earth's ice is sitting on Antarctica. 9% is on Greenland. And then a tiny 1% is all the mountain glaciers combined. The Alps, the Andes, the Himalayas, Alaska, all of it. Less than 1%. The Alps are basically a rounding error. If every mountain glacier in the world melted tomorrow, sea level would rise about 30 centimeters, about a foot. The whole drama lives in Antarctica and Greenland. Now, and this is the part where physics gets weirdly polite. There's a fourth kind of ice, the kind that floats. The Arctic sea ice, the North Pole, the frozen cap on top of the ocean. When that melts, nothing happens to sea level. It's Archimedes. The ice is already displacing its own weight in water. Melt the ice cube in your glass, the water doesn't overflow. Same physics, same ocean. So the headlines about the North Pole opening up? Real climate story. Terrifying for polar bears. Not a sea level story. The sea level story is grounded ice. Ice that's currently sitting on rock. That's what we're melting today.
Okay, pretend you have a magic button. You press it. All grounded ice on Earth melts. The 70 meters happen. What does the map look like? Florida is gone. Not flooded, gone. Like, where it used to be is open Atlantic Ocean, gone. The entire Atlantic coast of the United States retreats inland by hundreds of miles in places. Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Boston, most of New York City, underwater. The Statue of Liberty? Up to her shoulders. London, gone. Most of the Netherlands, gone. Denmark, most of it, gone. The Netherlands one stings a little extra, because they have spent 800 years building dikes and they're still going to lose. Bangladesh, a country of 170 million people, almost entirely underwater. Most of the populated parts of southern China. Shanghai, underwater. Tokyo, Mumbai, Jakarta, Bangkok, Ho Chi Minh City, all of them either gone or radically reshaped. The shape of the continents themselves would not change much, but the outline, the coastline you've been drawing since you were 6, would be unrecognizable. About 10% of the current land area would be underwater, but that 10% is the 10% where about 40% of humanity currently lives. Humans are coast people. We always have been. Trade flows through ports. Cities cluster where rivers hit the sea. Farmland sits on the flat alluvial plains that water carved out over millions of years. In a 70-meter world, the deltas go first. The Nile Delta, the Mississippi Delta, the Ganges Delta, the Mekong Delta. Every single one of them sits within meters of current sea level. The good news, if you want to squint hard for some, is that humanity isn't anchored to its current map. We moved before. We'll move again. Just very, very slowly, and not without a lot of arguing about whose problem it is. Here's the part most "if the ice melted" videos skip entirely. The reshaped map is just the boring part. The weather is the wild part. When you take 70 meters of fresh water and dump it into the ocean, you don't just raise the level. You change the chemistry. You change the temperature. You change the currents. The Gulf Stream, the giant ocean conveyor belt that keeps Europe warm, runs on a salt gradient. Dilute the salt, slow the belt, and ironically, the warmer Earth makes parts of Europe colder. The same logic flips weather patterns across the rest of the planet. Warmer atmosphere holds more water. More water in the air means more intense rainfall when it falls. More intense rainfall plus rising seas equals flooding events that are bigger than anything in recorded history. Agriculture moves. Wheat that used to grow in Kansas might grow in northern Canada. Siberia, currently a giant freezer, becomes farmland. The Sahara, in some models, even gets wetter because shifting monsoons swing back over North Africa the way they did 10,000 years ago. None of this is good or bad in some absolute sense. It is just different. And the people who built civilizations on the old pattern would have to redo everything. Every road, every power line, every sewer system, every airport, every port, every refinery. All of it sized and placed for a planet that no longer exists. Civilization is basically a giant pile of expensive post-it notes saying, "This is where the water was." Move the water, and the notes don't apply anymore. Now, the single most important sentence in this entire video. This would take centuries, maybe millennia. Ice sheets are not ice cubes. You can't put them on the counter and watch them puddle. They are kilometers thick. They have their own internal physics. They flow like extremely slow rivers. Antarctica's ice in places is more than 4 kilometers deep. Melting that much ice, even if you somehow held the planet at extreme warming, takes a really, really long time. Heat has to penetrate. Ice has to flow to the ocean and break off. Glaciers have to retreat across whole continents. Top-end estimates in expert elicitation studies, like Bamber and Aspinall in 2013, suggested sea level could rise up to about a meter by the year 2100 under really bad scenarios. Their 95th percentile estimate from ice sheets alone was around 84 centimeters. Not 70 meters. About 1. Maybe more if certain Antarctic shelves collapse faster than expected. Devastating to coastal cities even at 1 meter? Yes, but not the same conversation as the entire planet redrawn. The 70-meter every coast redrawn map? That's a thought experiment about a planet that's been warming for thousands of years. To give you a sense of pace, the last time Earth lost most of its ice naturally, at the end of the last ice age, sea level rose about 120 meters. That took about 13,000 years. Even at the fastest periods of that meltdown, when chunks of the North American ice sheet were collapsing, sea level rose about 4 meters per century. So even the fastest natural meltdown in recent geologic history didn't hit anywhere near every coastal city in one generation. So when somebody shows you a viral graphic of a redrawn world map and says, "This is what's coming," the map is real. The timeline is usually wrong. Okay, pull all the way back. What does any of this mean for you right now in your lifetime? 3 real things. 1. Sea level is rising now, about 4 millimeters a year, and accelerating. That sounds tiny. Over 50 years, it's about 20 centimeters, 8 inches. That doesn't sound apocalyptic, but 20 centimeters of average rise turns a normal storm surge into a flood that swallows neighborhoods that weren't supposed to flood. It's not the average level, it's the events on top of the average level that hurt. 2. The ice is melting faster than scientists predicted 30 years ago, not because the laws of physics changed, but because the feedback loops are nastier than the early models gave them credit for. White ice reflects sunlight. Dark ocean absorbs it. Less ice means more absorbed heat means less ice. 3. The "all the ice" headline is almost always more useful as a thought experiment than as a forecast. And honestly, the "all of it melts" framing kind of does the topic a disservice, because it makes the slow, real, measurable version feel boring by comparison. Nobody clicks on "sea level rose 4 millimeters this year." Everybody clicks on "Manhattan underwater by Thursday." But the slow version is the one that's actually happening. The slow version is what reshapes flood insurance and harbor design and where your grandkids' grandkids decide to live. The thought experiment is good. It shows you the scale of stored energy and stored water sitting on top of Antarctica. It makes you take ice loss seriously even when it's measured in millimeters. The forecast is bad because nobody is genuinely modeling all of it melts. They're modeling this much of it might melt in this century, and that range is where actual decisions get made. So the next time someone says, if all the ice melted, sea level would rise 70 meters, they're right. But the unspoken second sentence is, and that's a multi-millennium scenario, and nobody is forecasting it for next century. The thing to care about isn't the 70, it's the half meter to 2 meters. Because at 1 meter, a huge chunk of the world's coastal infrastructure is in serious trouble, and that's the number that's actually on the table. The 70-meter map is what happens if humanity completely loses the steering wheel for thousands of years. The 1-meter map is what happens if we keep doing what we're already doing. Earth's ice is one of the slowest, most patient things in the solar system. It doesn't make sudden decisions. It just keeps the receipts. Every gram of carbon you put in the air today gets logged, quietly, methodically. The ice doesn't argue. It doesn't tweet. It just integrates. And in the world's slowest, most expensive, most ruthlessly patient way, it's about to start cashing them in, 1 millimeter at a time. Curious which other what-if scenario your gut is wildly wrong about? Subscribe. Friday's question is about what would happen if Earth stopped spinning for 1 second.